after August 17th, Google's bidding system will change and it will be impacted regarding the target CPA and the return on ad spend. How's it going, everybody? Gene Villanose here. Another episode of the PPC Cave. Today is episode 126, and when this episode releases, it will be August 17th. So we all know that one episode that we made, you've probably seen it everywhere, that after August 17th, Google's bidding system will change and it will be impacted regarding the target CPA and the return on ad spend. So if you have a limited by budget campaign and are using either target CPA or return on ad spend, and say your current actual return on ad spend or your current actual target CPA is outperforming what you set, what if it is limited by budget, what you set might be closer to what you actually will be receiving. And unfortunately, some of the campaigns that are outperforming those targets will probably get brought back down to earth and probably not do as well and not overperform anymore, especially if it's limited by budget. So how does Opteo kind of fit into this? Opteo's AI chat function, all you have to basically go to is the chat function and say, hey, are there anything that's going to be impacted with the August 17th update? Any targets that are outperforming right now that have either the campaign type bid strategy for either target CPA or return on ad spend, how should I go about that? And I'll give you recommendations, the historical, actual CPA and actual return on ad spend, and it could help you set the target so that you do not lose out after the August 17th update. And that's the good thing about Opteo. It just does all the thinking for you. So go to www.opteo.com/theppccave and go to the chat box and say, hey, I would like to upgrade my 14-day trial to a 28-day trial. I heard it first on the PPC Cave. So today we are talking about automated bidding versus manual CPC. When to make this switch. And I think this is very relevant to the August 17th Google Ads update, just because the target CPA is not going to become a suggestion anymore. The return on ad spend isn't going to be a suggestion. Google is putting a lot of emphasis on advertisers to make sure that the target actually represents what they're willing to pay. And, Google's recommending advertisers to really review these campaigns before then, and adjust the target, keep the target, increase the budget, whatever it may be. So it kind of leads into manual CPC. Manual CPC will not be impacted or affected after August 17th. So it's kind of like a good way to understand a little bit more of maybe when should we use manual CPC. We all know when we should graduate from manual to an automated bid strategy, and that's essentially what all these people want that manage PPC. It's like, oh, I just want to be able to set it and forget it, put on automated bid strategy. But yeah, Google obviously wants us advertisers to move towards that automation, and generally we will agree that an automated bid strategy is where a mature campaign should end up, or the goal towards that is what we want. But that doesn't mean every campaign should be automated at every single stage. I think it's important to be able to decipher and have clarity on when it should be at that automated bid strategy stage versus when it should remain at manual CPC. And for me, there's a couple things, and I'll go through these things one by one. First and foremost, I think we all know this is kind of redundant, but I think we have to start here. But automated bid strategy, it's going to need good data, and good data doesn't mean just a lot of data. It also means how the conversion tracking is set up. Is it reliable? Are we what is counted as a conversion actually a conversion? That's super important. But the question is, how likely is this particular auction going to generate the conversion that I'm optimizing toward? And that's what Google is trying to predict. Can we use the signals, or can we simply signals we simply can't manually like process, like auction by auction. That's the strength of the automation. It's like kind of taking that manual perspective out and saying, okay, how likely is this particular auction, this particular searcher right now, how are they likely to generate a conversion? And that's the good thing about automated bid strategy. But you don't get to that point until you have adequate data. And I think that's super important. What we're feeding into the Google ecosystem, if it's weak information or conversion data is faulty, then that's not a good basis of decision making. We can't create decisions through that weak information. So that's the first thing that I would consider. And secondly, I would consider when automating bid strategy usually makes sense. And for me, it just really depends. Obviously, conversion tracking has to be accurate, and the campaign has to consistently generate conversions from the conversion volume aspect, and also meaningful recent conversion history. I think that's super important as well, right? But the big thing is this isn't a universal threshold. It's not like, oh, there's 20 conversions in the account, time to go for automated bid strategy. A lot of the times I hold off on that. And I'd rather see multiple months through and through to see, okay, my automated bid strategy might make sense here. But thirdly, when I would consider manual CPC, and this has been changing more and more so now that we have a lot of options for things that are automated. I think a big one is understanding the situation for specific accounts and clients, right? If you have a very low conversion volume, maybe you have like a very long sales cycle and you can't get that volume of 40 conversions, 20 to 40 conversions. You're only getting maybe 4 conversions a month. And, maybe the CPA, the target CPA is a little expensive. You're basically asking Google's algorithm to identify these patterns with low conversion, and then graduating that specifically to an automated bid strategy is going to be very difficult. It's going to put a lot of strain and perhaps confusion in Google Ads so that you're not getting the results that you want. So when I would consider manual CPC, first and foremost, is when the situation is a low conversion volume, you have a long sales cycle, maybe it's just a super premium product or service. I would say at that point, let's control the traffic ourselves and collect better data, and then maybe give automation a shot down the road. Secondly is the cost per click is just getting out of hand. And sometimes you're in a bidding war there with specific competitors, and maybe the average CPC is $12, and then you start seeing through the weeks going by that it's starting to increase, 20, 30%. Google may have hundreds of signals telling that it's a specific amount per click, but there's not really a high probability of you being able to get conversions if your cost per click continually increases without you getting any conversions previously. So I think this is a good time to say, hey, I want to pay a specific amount for these clicks. I need to. So manual CPC will allow us to get some of these guardrails up and understand that, hey, maybe the client and I are only willing to pay $10 a click or $8 a click. But I think it's really important that you have that conversation with the client and say, hey, this is the landscape right now. If we're going to have any success in this account, we're going to really have to hone in on how much cost per click is. And we can't do that on a max conversion or max conversion value or an automated bid strategy. We have to do that on a manual bid strategy, because it's the only way that we could really understand the threshold of how much we want to pay per click. And I think that's, really kind of like an unsung thing, or like an understated thing. It's just really important for you to get with the client and understand, that, yeah, you might be able to get 1 click for this amount, but you might be able 4 or 5 clicks for something lower than that. And I think that's super important, just because sometimes it's a volume game. You could have, a lead generation or e-commerce client, and this is the keyword on the landing page. This says this keyword specifically so many times on a landing page. This is my actual product. But if you're getting only like a low sample size of clicks, you can't expect expect all those clicks to just bring in conversions. You need to have that volume, that multiple clicks. And maybe you need to go broad. Maybe you need to run only a couple times a week. You need to make those things happen for the client, because even if the keyword is super relevant, sometimes it's just not going to conversions just isn't going to happen, just because we think that's how it should go, and we're going to need more volume there, more clicks. So decreasing the manual CPC or going manual CPC is definitely better than just having an automated bid strategy blow through the budget one day or however long. But understanding that manual CPC can be more so like a reset. It's being able to control the bids, I guess, and being able to kind of go back into the time where we had more control over what we're running as Google Ads PPC managers. And we all know back in the day we had a lot of control, but we don't have that anymore, right? We're beginning to give up a lot more control. Even with this August 17th update, feels like we're losing more control. But manual CPC is kind of like a blast from the past. That gives us a little bit more control on what we want to bid on, and you could really even go a step further and do a lot of secondary biddings if you want to bid on specific devices. Manual CPC is a good tool to do that, because we all know if it's an automated bid strategy, any device bid or even locational bid, any secondary bid adjustment is going to not really take into effect on an automated bid strategy, because you're giving Google the reins to just say, hey, show my ad, show these keywords whenever you please to get however much conversion. So with manual CPC, you kind of take the reins back. Another thing to consider is just don't switch to from an automated bid strategy to a manual CPC, or just in general, bid strategies, just because you had like 2 days worth of data, and that's kind of difficult for some clients to understand that you need a bigger sample size. And I don't get it. We always use the example, if I looked at my stock portfolio every day, I'd probably go crazy. And I think that's the same thing with Google Ads. It's month over month, year over year investment, so I think it's important to look at the data through those lenses. I'll usually look through a 14-day or 30-day or 60-day. What is actually changing, and are we reacting emotionally, or are we actually looking at just normal variance or seasonality, whatever it may be. But understand that manual CPC is not going to fix a bad campaign. If you have bad keywords, you didn't do your research on what keywords are actually on your web page or on your website, your landing page, that's not going to fix it. I think it's really important to know that most of the time, if you're having not success, opposite of success, you're having trouble with Google Ads, it's probably on your website. Maybe a weak landing page, or the offering is just weak, the demand is not there. Maybe start there, but understand that manual CPC, what it can do is give you more control over a campaign, and I think that's really important. And I think the big thing, another point is, if you want to test other keywords, you want to test other keywords, and you're on automated bid strategy and it's doing really well, but you want to test other keywords. You don't know if another keyword is going to bring you the same type of success just because you're an automated bid strategy. It's always going to go for the one that's historically done the best. So for testing purposes, I think manual CPC is really good. Or if you're just getting up a new campaign or new account and you don't have that data, I think manual CPC is a good way to kind of manually rotate all those keywords so that all of them get spent and not just one that converts. So I think it's important to understand that we don't know things until we test them. So that's another benefit of having manual CPC. And I think the August 17th connection kind of boils down to the performance target that you actually want, or that what you've been getting. We're gonna try to really deliver closer to the target that you set. So whatever it says on your target CPA or the return on ad spend, that's what you're gonna get. So it gives a little bit more predictability, especially when the budget changes. And I think that's a good thing. But I think it's understanding that the more important thing is, it's basically what the algorithm is being told to do is what is going to happen, is what is being set. So if you're actually happy for paying the like $50 per lead and your target CPA is sitting at 100 because you haven't touched it in 8 months, August 17th is kind of like the primer to be like, hey, you need to look at these campaigns. But if you don't have enough reliable conversion data to confidently establish that target in the first place, I think it's important to kind of bring in manual CPC as an option, because if you're not really confident in setting a specific target CPA or target return on ad spend, maybe the data is showing you that you're not getting enough conversion volume to even be at an automated bid strategy, then maybe going back to a manual CPC strategy is an interesting and a more valid way for you to handle that account. But yeah, I think with some of the checklists to kind of go over is before switching, from an automated bid strategy to manual CPC, or even going from manual CPC to automated bid strategy. Understand, is the conversion tracking set up? Is it trustworthy? Are you and the client understanding together that the conversion tracking is correct? Do I have enough meaningful conversions in regards to the volume? Are the CPCs becoming unreasonable month over month? It's just continually getting higher and higher. Or even does the target CPA or the return on ad spend deteriorated over, month over month? So I think these are some questions that we should ask and see, and then maybe if some of these answers lead to a more of a manual CPC where you need to really have a grasp on what's being shown as a search keyword, then it's a good test to move from automated bid strategy to a manual CPC bid strategy. But yeah, that's basically it for today. And don't forget, August 17th, I keep saying it. I didn't want to make another episode on it, but it's good for me to just remind you, since this will release on August 17th. Google is really trying to make that target-based automated bid strategy more predictable. But it just kind of reinforces the things that us PPC managers already understand. Automation is only as good as the data that you provide it, and manual CPC still has a place in a lot of my campaigns to regain that control, clean up the data a little bit, and understand, okay, these are the keywords that I want to push. And I think it's a good way to build a foundation, so the goal isn't really like, oh, it's manual versus automated. It's more so like, how much control should I give Google based on the quality of information that they have? And you will create the educated decision through understanding the data and saying, okay, well, maybe I need to switch to manual CPC for a season and hold off on automated bid strategy until I see something more consistent in the data. But yeah, that is it for now. Again, we always release Mondays, 12 a.m. Mountain Time. If you have any questions, go to theppccave@gmail.com. Don't forget about our sponsors, www.optio.com/theppccave. Upgrade your 14-day trial to a 28-day trial. If you want consultation, PPC management, or just you want to ask me a question, go to my website, www.tempest59.com. That is tempest59.com. And until then, bye for now.